somehow had no access to his knowledge. Think about it. Like, is he putting his knowledge in a box and locking the key, and then he has no access to the key? Only opens it, then he knows.
So we believe Christ knew what the plan was. He knew that he was going to go through the atonement, is what we call it. He knew that was going to happen. He knew that was going to happen. So he knew what he was going to go through, that he was going to follow his Father's will, which is his will.
No, it's not his will.
It is his will.
Because he says, not according to my will. That's what I'm trying to understand. I mean, how do you interpret it differently? He says, not according to my will, but according to your will. If there was one single will, he would say according to our will. Do you follow?
Well, but I think that Christ gives all the glory to his Father. And so, for example, for us to be saved, it is through Jesus Christ that we are saved, because he sacrificed himself for us, for our sins. And so, through the will of his Father, he is also given. They're one in purpose. And so, I think that, what am I trying to say? Where are we on this one? I can't remember. I lost my train of thought.
No worries. The idea, the concept that you have, God sacrificing himself, his own life. Don't you find it strange? God creates human beings knowing they're weak, knowing they will fall short, knowing they will sin. And the way then he comes up with a solution to save them is committing self-sacrifice, punishing himself to save them.
We believe in what is called the plan of salvation.
Yeah, that's the plan I'm saying. Isn't that a strange plan?
No, I don't think so.
Killing himself to save.
He paid for the price of all of our sins.
So what do we do then? What do we do as human beings to deserve his sin?
To deserve the sin, or to deserve him paying for our own sins? We want to follow the commandments, follow God's will. That's what we do. That's what we're trying to do here on earth. But we have our free agency to choose good or evil. Yeah. Right or wrong.
So we choose right and wrong. When does this choice arise? When is the first time that this choice actually arises for a person? Does it go back to, because I've heard some Christians say that it goes right back to the point when the baby is born, that they have some type of sinful nature. Do you Mormons also agree to that and share that belief? So a baby is born innocent? So I take it that
we don't baptize children, or we don't baptize.
Right. So a baby is born.
We have it at the age of accountability is 8 years old.
8, right.
Yes.
Okay. So you've got a fixed date, not a date that is flexible?
Well,
there or thereabouts.
Yeah, thereabouts. So you have, if someone converts to the Mormon faith, then they could be baptized at 19, 32, whatever age. But 8 is the general age for members of the church.
Right, okay.
So my children were baptized at 8 years old.
And that's when the accountability begins, and then that's when a person's sins are then what?
You can repent,
accounted for
right?
by God?
Yes, but you need to repent.
Right.
You can't just sin and say, it's all taken care of, right?
That's what I'm trying to get at, because
so
I do understand that the Mormons...
There's like mercy or grace and justice.
So just to get this straight, because I know you Mormons differ quite substantially in terms of salvation from the Christians. So if I can just understand, you guys obviously believe that there's a point where a child becomes an adult and therefore has the ability to discern things and therefore is responsible in and of itself.
Well, I think that they can begin.
They reach a
This
point
is my
where,
husband.
They reach a point where they can knowingly choose
between right and wrong.
Right and wrong. And when you knowingly choose wrong.
Yes. So far, I think our beliefs are certainly different from the mainstream Christians, because we also believe that the difference between a person who's held to account and a person who isn't held to account is the faculties of reason, the ability to be able to tell the difference between right and wrong.
They have to be able to know that it's wrong.
Precisely.
Choose it wrong.
So,
and the fact is that most of us with our fallen nature will choose wrong at some point.
Right.
And because we choose wrong, we're not clean, and so we need someone that can atone for us.
And that's where we, I think, part ways, right? This is where we as Muslims part way from the Mormons, because as soon as you say that another person comes into account for the sins that we ourselves have consciously chosen to do, I think that's where the difference lies. Because for the Muslims, we find it difficult to understand this idea that human beings who have their own mental free will, their own choice, the ability to be able to choose between right and wrong, are then going to then only be purged of their sins if someone else who is innocent and who has no consequence regarding our choice between right and wrong will then be held to, well, how would you put it in Christianity? Die for our sins?
Yeah, I would say, well,
Or Mormonism?
I would say that it was someone who's perfect.
Perfect.
And that's why we worship Christ as someone who's perfect, that never knowingly chose to sin.
Right. So this perfect being chose to die for the sins of mankind.
Yeah, infinite atonement. And one of the reasons that you mentioned, why would we worship a being who took on flesh?
Yeah.
Having a God that has gone through, that has suffered as we have suffered, we feel like he can succor us because he understands our infirmities.
Okay,
more approachable.
So there's a difference between a person understanding someone's sins and a person dying for the sins. Now, what I find difficult is, what type of justice is this? What type of justice is it understood? This type of justice, is it understood through human history? For instance, have you ever heard of a nation that implements a law whereby an innocent person is going to be sacrificed for the sins of someone else? Have you ever come across that type of justice? So,
No, but you can't make that comparison.
but why? Why can't you make that comparison? Because look, the only comparison that we have, the only way of judging morality is through the laws that we have on this earth. So for anyone to come along and say, no, you can't make that comparison because you need to transcend what we understand to be morally just, is an impossibility. How can you ask me to transcend what I understand to be justice and what all human beings have understood as being justice, and then expect me to accept that as truth? Wouldn't that be asking me to do something that's contradictory? Look, I don't know of any society where the judge, if I was put in the stand, the judge will take my brother Mansour and say, Mansour, you're perfect, you're innocent, but you're going to be sacrificed for the sins that your brother has done. Anyone who would look at that, they would say, that's not justice, that's injustice. Why would the innocent person be held to account for the sins of another person?
Well,
But if Mansour said, here, judge, let me pay the fine, I'll pay for it, and then he turns to you and says, now I will do the one.
Yeah,
that's what we say that Christ did. That he did it. He sacrificed, but then we go through him. He's the one that determines salvation.
okay, but that still doesn't. Imagine me in that stand thinking that, you know what, or rather, when I'm about to commit a crime, if I know that there's someone who's going to die for my sins, I can go ahead and do whatever I want. So what is the motivation?
You could, except he may not be willing to take your sins. You have to now. So Christ pays for the sins. Now he is the new judge.
Right.
And so if you go and you're like to Christ and disrespect him,
Okay.
then you still have
So what if I come out of jail and I commit the same sin again? Will Christ again die for my sins? Because he's already paid for my sins. I've come out of jail now. I'm an innocent person, but I go and commit another crime. Will Christ again? In other words, what I'm trying to get across to you here is, if this idea of the innocent dying for the guilty, whereby the guilty are then allowed to go off scot-free, is justice, it makes a mockery of morality and the way society would function. Because then anyone can go around to do whatever they want, knowing that there's someone waiting in the wings to die for my sins.
Well, I mean, it's hard for me to debate the philosophical background about the whole thing. I just know that on a personal basis, that when I don't want...
Appreciate it.
And
What's your name, brother?
I'm Troy.
Troy. Yeah. Troy, Hamza. Pleasure meeting you. Troy, look.
I have a number of friends that are Muslim. I appreciate, the one thing I appreciate with my Muslim friends is that we'll both read our scriptures and we both pray regularly. And I feel like I have more in common with people of faith than I do with the secular world who scoffs at.
But in the end, Troy, whether that, although that's a noble thing and it's a wonderful thing, because the whole point of being amongst different people is that you try and break down barriers so that you live in relative harmony. But in the end, Troy, you're going to end up in the same place that I'm going to end up, which is in front of our Lord. And whether I was speaking nicely to Troy or whether Troy was speaking nicely to me is not going to absolve us from the absolute judgment that we're going to have to face in the hereafter. So Troy, the question here is, we need to get things right now. And we can't, I don't think I'm giving you philosophical arguments. I think they're very plain arguments. They're based upon a priori knowledge that have been practiced by human beings right across society, right across the epoch of human existence. And I can't think of any society that has said that the innocent will pay for the sins of the guilty. And the thing here is, do you believe in original sin? You guys have that concept of original sin? You know, Adam doing a sin and mankind will inherit that sin, and therefore Jesus to come down and pay for that sin?
Not in the traditional Christian.
Not in the traditional. So in what way then? Is there any type of inheritance of sins from Adam?
Mostly that's how death was introduced.
That's how death was introduced. So is death a type of punishment?
Physical death.
Physical death. So in other words,
spiritual.
right.
But then that was through the resurrection, and that was compensated. Sure. So that I think would be the only concept of original sin in that term, in terms of that.
So the spiritual death is a negative, adverse thing?
The spiritual death comes from knowingly sinning against God. From knowingly sinning.
Knowingly sinning, right? Okay.
So the physical death we feel was absolved through the resurrection.
Okay, right. Okay, interesting. You want to carry
Do
on
you
with
believe in the Muslim faith? Do they believe in repentance?
Absolutely. This is one of the
So
central.
what do you do if you've sinned? What do you do to repent?
It's an excellent question, because it's one of the central themes in our belief systems. Repenting shows that what? Firstly, the moment you make a mistake or commit a sin, right? You acknowledge that first and foremost.
I want to know what kind of
You acknowledge that, because if you don't acknowledge it, you're a very arrogant, stubborn individual, right? You are a rebel against God. So you acknowledge that with all the humility that was a wrong thing that you have done. Mm-hmm. Immediately you turn to God and ask God's forgiveness. If you have done something wrong to others, rectify, and finally make the intention not to commit this wrong again.
Right.
And increase in doing good works, so that the good works can get rid of some of your bad actions and things. So these 5 points are essential. And God, in our belief, He has so many names relating to these aspects of sin, that He is ever forgiving, merciful, kind, gracious, benevolent. All of these relational attributes that God has with relation to us. If we mistakenly or willingly do something wrong and we turn to Him, He loves that we return to Him, and He returns to us and says He forgives us.
We have that same belief that repentance is essential.
Yeah.
It is an essential part of our being.
The one thing I'm quite curious how you explain it to yourself. I mean, this is your belief system. When you say He died voluntarily, He paid for you. Not died, we believe that. He took in the punishment on His behalf. The punishment that you would have suffered. Right? So suppose me or you, let's take both of us, if we didn't follow what God commanded us to follow, and we did exactly the opposite. We denied Him, rejected Him, we blasphemed Him, became an arrogant, stubborn, rebellious individual, and did all the wicked things, killing, murder, rape, what have you. I don't have to go into so much graphics. And we died on that state. Now, such an individual, according to your belief system, should be punished. But God, in His mercy, in your belief, has taken the punishment Himself. But suppose now the punishment, someone says, no, I want to face the punishment, right? Okay, now I've done that, okay, I want to go along with the punishment, what I've done. I want to be responsible for what I've done. I want to be a responsible person. What would be the punishment? A £10 penalty? 1 year in prison? What kind of punishment is it? Is it a severe punishment in hellfire? What kind of punishment would I and you
if I knowingly tried to commit sin my whole life without
the example I gave you,
repentance, I think we suffer a spiritual death because we haven't tried to follow any of the steps.
What do you mean by spiritual death?
I think that we will be denied the opportunity to dwell with Christ and dwell with our Heavenly Father after this life.
Okay, so let's take that
Because
punishment.
we have
Okay.
put them aside. And
That's fine.
Said, I don't
So let's now take this is the punishment that we would have faced. Someone to volunteer to take on our punishment would have to face the same penalty. Do you now follow? So if Christ comes along and volunteers, I'm going to take your punishment. His punishment is going to be denying himself within the presence of the Father forever. Has he done that? Has he taken that punishment on himself?
Well, that's what we feel that happened in the Garden of Gethsemane, is that he suffered the sins for all men.
Was he separated from his Father and within the presence of his Father? Because that's the penalty
Yeah, and
we agreed on.
that's why in the Bible it says, my God, why hast thou forsaken me? Because God finally cut off his presence from Christ. So
Okay.
we call
Now-
that an infinite. We call that what part of the infinite, the infinite nature of the infinite.
Let's try to a little bit understand that. If someone is God, like Christ and the Father, divine beings, can you really cut yourself? Remember what you discussed earlier? They all agree. Can a divine being cut off from another divine being? You can't. You can't cut off. So he cannot really have taken that punishment. So he hasn't paid for your sins. That's what I'm getting at. How do you explain that?
But he did pay for it. In our belief, he paid for our sins
How?
in the Garden of Gethsemane.
Because he had to be cut off from the divine presence of the Father, which is impossible for him to do. Because he being divine cannot be cut off.
I reject the premise saying that it's not possible to do. That's what we says, that he did it. He was cut off.
If you do give this allowance, then we're back to square one about the ideas of Trinity and each one having their own dominion, own authority, own power, own will, and trying to impose their own will on the other divines.
No, I'm not back there, but you're back there. I'm still back to that they're one in purpose. They have one.
But your husband was just saying it is possible that they can have two purposes.
No, I don't think that that's what he was saying. I know that's not what he's saying.
Husband,
So
be careful.
Be careful.
It's been nice visiting with
The
you.
lady's watching you.
We came for a nice walk to see what happened and speak.
No, we're just having discussions
No, this was great. I love
enlighten
this.
our
I'm
thoughts.
so glad I came because this was fascinating. As you started talking, the other gentleman that started to talk with us, I thought, why when I was in college I didn't take a class on Muslim beliefs, and because I'm not educated on it at all. I'm just.
We're not educated in Mormonism. Trust us. The first time, was it 2 weeks ago? We came across
I've spoken to some people before, but of course, to the level to
Lovely
have
guy.
knowledge. I mean, I know a lot of things. I mean, that we could have questioned, but obviously now I don't want to bore you with your.
No, but this
that-
was fascinating, and I appreciate your
but if
respect that you.
if you feel that at least it's given you some introduction to look into our faith, Islam, look into what the Quran has to say about God, about hereafter, about our purpose in life, and the man prophet who was commissioned to be a prophet of God, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, then we've actually had a fruitful discussion.
No, and I appreciate learning more about it. I know that Muslims are peaceful people. I think that they're wonderful.
So I work in the linguistics department at my university, and I work with the Arabic faculty. So I have a,
So you got it locked down.
yeah. So
He doesn't have it locked
well,
down, but
compared to we live in a we're in a sort of a rural area where like 95% are like wide, not very multicultural, and so it's.
Well,
this is a great education for our children.
So it's been a pleasure speaking to both of you. So do take care, and God guide us all closer and closer to the truth.
you can get more cosmopolitan in London. It's a hot part of poetry.
Yes, I think it's an amazing place, and we just got here yesterday.
Yeah.
We were.
You guys here going to be here coming down next Sunday for a finale?
I don't know if we'll be here, but we might be here in 2 weeks.
The person you're speaking to is back.
We might be here with a guest.
Hey, you know what? Come down. We're here. Mansoor is here. So
You'll be here Sunday in the evening.
if we know you're going to be here, we'll definitely be here.
Maybe in 2 weeks, right? I don't know. Perhaps, but this.
Pleasure speaking to you.
Yes, I'm so glad. I was just walking around, just trying to absorb the conversation and see what was happening. And
Also, can I say that I know that I was saying to your daughters, a lot of times when you're having a conversation, it's quite pleasant and so on. When the cameras arrive, you kind of feel a bit daunting and invasive. My friend who's doing the filming said, look, if you're uncomfortable, we can just delete everything. You know what I mean? It's like,
just don't edit it so I look
No.
Don't make it so I look like an idiot.
No.
That's very inhuman thing to do.
Weird or like that.
Like devils in the background.
It's like, it's like,
Promise?
yes.
So, this is one of the channels, SCDawah. You can see the conversation yourself. You log onto YouTube.
Okay.
Yeah. So hopefully they will upload it.
So I'll be on YouTube. Oh,
It's
no.
probably already being uploaded right now.
As you speak.
Some of them are live streamed.
I'll tell my son.
Andy Warhol said there will come a time, you know Andy Warhol, right?
Yes.
That there will come a time when everyone gets 15 minutes of fame.
Right.
He didn't know how he didn't know how right he was. He didn't know how
I
right
never
he was.
asked for the fame. I don't want
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. You're the difference.
Sadly, we live in a world where if you don't become famous, you probably will do one day.
Anyway, take care once again.